Hi and welcome to Terry Talks Movies. This time I've got a haul, but a different haul. It's from Vision Imprint and it's their latest releases. There are some things which are the Imprint releases for this month, and there are other things which are box sets of a lot of movies. They are mostly British comedies. So I'll start off with the British comedies because why the hell not? These ones I like. I've got some of these already, but these are on Blu-ray, which I really appreciate because they take up less space on the shelf. The Carry On movies, Carry On Collection number 2, which has Carry On Regardless, Carry On Cruising, Carry On Cabby, and Carry On Jack. Now, these ones are a lot of fun. I think if you grew up with the Carry On movies, you're going to appreciate them a lot more. Carry On Regardless was one of the very early ones because it's in black and white, but it doesn't tell me what the plot is. But does the plot really matter that much in a Carry On movie? It tends to be a frame for the jokes and the characters and things. There's Sid James, Kenneth Connor, Charles Hawtrey, Joan Sims, Kenneth Williams, Bill Owen, Liz Fraser, and Terence Longdon. But the second one, Carry On Cruising, is one of the later ones from the 1970s. And this one has Sid James, Kenneth Williams, Kenneth Connor, Liz Fraser, Dilla Slay, Esme McCann, and Lance Percival. So that one's a little more risque because it's from the 1970s and they were allowed to do just a little bit more with the Carry On format. It's from 1963. Carry On Cabby is one of my favourites because it's got a stronger plot than a lot of the Carry On movies. In this one, you've got a cab company which is kind of slack at its job, and suddenly in their local area, there's a female cab company called Glam Cabs which starts up with attractive women as all the cab drivers, and so the old school cab drivers lose their business. And so there's a war of the sexes kind of thing going on here. It's in black and white, but it's a lot of fun. And because of that stronger plot line, I think it works really well. This one's got Sid James, Hattie Jakes, who is wonderful, Kenneth O'Connor, Charles Hawtrey, Esme McCann, Liz Fraser, and Jim Dale. And that one is probably the best of the bunch in this one, except possibly for Carry On Jack, which is the sailing one. It's a nautical 18th century kind of Carry On movie. This one has Kenneth Williams, Bernard Cribbins, Juliet Mills, John Mills' daughter, Charles Hawtrey, Donald Houston, and Cecil Parker. And it's from 1964. It's actually in colour, sorry. And Carry On Jack is a lot of fun. It plays on a lot of the tropes of the 1950s English naval epics that were put out by a number of different studios. And there's a script by Talbot Rothwell, who was one of the better writers for the Carry On movies. But there's a box. It's a really nice catch. And it's good that Vision are putting these ones out. They're comedies of their time, so they're not necessarily going to be the most unsexist of comedies, but there's a lot of wordplay, and there's a lot of incredibly experienced comedians in these. You either like the Carry On movies or you don't, and for me, they're a comfort movie, and I like watching them, and I'm glad that Vision have put it out, and thank you to Vision for the movies. Now, movies based on TV shows are an old phenomenon, and they're also a new phenomenon as well. There were 3, I think, Sex in the City movies based on the TV series. This box set, which has 9 discs in it, is mostly movie adaptations of comedy TV series that were put out by the English in the 1970s. We've got, there it is, British Comedy Classics Film Collection number 2. Now, the best in these are not the ones based on the TV series. The TV series involved Men About the House, which was about a horny guy who moves in with 2 beautiful young girls to rent a flat because everybody needs accommodation. There was a shortage of accommodation. But the landlords, George and Mildred, played by Eutha Joyce and Brian Murphy, had a spin-off TV series of their own. And they got a movie as well called George and Mildred, obviously. And then there's Father Dear Father, where Patrick Cargill plays a middle-aged father who has 2 young daughters, and there's a back and forth because the young girls are modern women of the 1970s and the father's very old-fashioned. So it's one of those kind of tropes. It's not too bad. There's Bless This House, which was a TV series that Sid James starred in the 1970s. Are You Being Served, which is set in a department store with a whole bunch of characters, including John Edmonds, Mr. Humphreys. And there's a movie adaptation of a stage play, farce, called No Sex, Please We're British. So they're the most of them. But the 3 that I really like in this are the 3 movies that starred Eric Morecambe and Ernie Wise. One of the great comedy duos of the second half of the 20th century. Eric and Ernie were fantastic. They started working together on stage in working men's clubs when they were teenagers, and they had a career all the way until Eric Morecambe died in the 1980s. But Eric and Ernie were fantastic. Their comedy timing and their comedy rapport is something truly magical. And when they did their Christmas specials on TV in the 1970s, they would get incredible celebrities on them. People like Glenda Jackson would turn up, and Oscar-winning actors and really famous stage actors. Andre Previn, the film composer, turned up on there as well. And Eric and Ernie in the 1960s did 3 movies. They're not necessarily totally their best work, but they're a lot of fun, and I just love the way that the two guys have this incredible instinctive and built over decades rapport with each other. Of course, Ernie's the straight man and Eric's the gag guy. But they did 3 movies: The Intelligence Men, That Riviera Touch, and The Magnificent Two. The first one is a spy spoof, which I like a lot. The second one, That Riviera Touch, is the two guys going to the south of France and having a cultural clash with the French, but in a non-racist kind of way. And The Magnificent Two is the two of them getting involved in South American revolutions. Again, they're not really top tier Morecambe-wise, but they're a lot of fun to watch. So getting this one, these are on DVD of course, but all 9 movies are on separate discs. They're a lot of fun, and there are people starting to do some really interesting academic work on comedies of these types and of these days, and just seeing how they reflected English society at the time, how there are some universal themes in them, and how they play to a modern audience. So that's a very timely release by Viavision. And I think because of those 3 Eric and Ernie movies, I really like this one. The others I can take or leave, and I may watch some of them. That's not the discs loose, that's the little enclosure for the discs being loose. But those ones I'm going to enjoy. They're of their time, of course, and comedy does change. But I think the virtue of all of these is they didn't punch downwards. They weren't kind of mocking working class people. They were about, in some cases, working class people, and they mocked upwards. And I think that that's the virtue that we can take from it as modern filmgoers. Then there's the one Tarantino that I don't have in my collection. It's a portmanteau movie made in 1995. It's in a posh hotel. There's a bellhop called Ted, and it's his first day on the job. He's played by Tim Roth, who, in spite of all the serious roles he's done, has a really great touch of comedy. And the different segments within that frame were directed by Alison Anders, Alexandra Rockwell, Robert Rodriguez, and Quentin Tarantino. And there's 4 rooms on Blu-ray, I think, for the first time in Australia. And I remember liking this one. A lot of people didn't like them. The different segments, people said, were a bit uneven, but I haven't watched this for a long time. It's got a few featurettes on it, making of featurette, 4 directors, 4 friends, 4 rooms. And I like the cast in this too. You got Antonio Banderas, Jennifer Beals, Madonna turns up in there as well, Lily Taylor, Marissa Tomei, Quentin Tarantino turns up in there as well. It's got a nice ensemble in it. A lot of people didn't like it, but I kind of did. And it completes my Tarantino collection up to this point. So 4 rooms. I kind of like the musical score. I don't remember who did the musical score, but I like 4 rooms as a kind of experimental piece. And it's a collaborative piece between the 4 directors, all based around this hapless bellboy. Worth having in your collection, and it's nice that Viavision have put this out as a release on Blu-ray, because Tarantino completers like myself can then just sit back and relax. We move on to the Imprint releases for this month, and they're pretty good. They're 2 box sets, one based around a director, one based around an actor. And I think I'll do the director first because there's a 4K in this. Its release has been delayed for a little bit while they got together the extras and a few other bits. And it's one that people have been really anticipating. And it's called Directed by Walter Hill. And it's a whole bunch of Walter Hill movies. In fact, half a dozen of them. And this is the release that Imprint fans and movie fans have been waiting for a fairly long time. Now, this one may be a TV movie, may not be a TV movie. But it's from 2006, and I know very little about it. But it's got a great cast. Thomas Hayden Church and Robert Duvall in Broken Trail. Now, this one I don't think got a release here in Australia before. but it's directed by Walter Hill. The Broken Trail, I just took a look at the blurb on the back. It's interesting. Set in 1898, Print Ritter, played by Robert Duvall, and his estranged nephew Tom Hart, played by Thomas Hayden Church, become the reluctant guardians of 5 abused and abandoned Chinese girls. Ritter and Hart's attempt to care for the girls are complicated by the responsibility to deliver a herd of horses while avoiding a group of bitter rivals intent on kidnapping the girls for their own purposes. That's a solid premise for a movie, and I'm going to watch this one because that premise just sold me on the film. I want to see that. And it's a Western taken from a different viewpoint, which is always an interesting thing. Westerns can be prone to cliches because there have been so many of them, but this one's got an interesting premise. Next one is, I'll give you the blurb on the next one. Texan Ranger Jack Benteen is recruited by the CIA to bring down his childhood friend Cash Bailey, now a ruthless drug baron operating across the Mexican border. And it's basically a secret cadre of war veterans who are sent to do something. And the top blurb is even better. An army of forgotten heroes, all officially dead. They live for combat. Now they've met the wrong man. Extreme prejudice. I know I've seen this one back in the day, and this is from 1987, so I would have seen it on VHS. But I don't recall too much about it. But I've heard good things from a number of people about Extreme Prejudice, and I'm looking forward to seeing that one as well. This is Mickey Rourke before his face turned to porcelain. Johnny Handsome, which is kind of interesting. Johnny Handsome, a severely deformed petty criminal, is double-crossed in a robbery and left to take the rap for it on his own. The prison doctor believes plastic surgery will lead Johnny on the path to reform. But when released, Johnny's potential fresh start in life is hampered by a desire for revenge. This one's kind of got an irony about it. It's about a guy with a deformed face who gets a pretty face, played by Mickey Rourke, who then went on to totally destroy his own face. There's irony there. Again, this is a Walter Hill joint. Bit of crime stuff. This is Mickey Rourke before he went off the rails, so solid stuff. Now, we've got another Western because Walter Hill is known for this as much as anything else. It's another iteration of Frank and Jesse James, The Long Riders, which stars David Carradine, Keith Carradine, Robert Carradine, James Keach, Stacey Keach, Dennis Quaid, Randy Quaid, Christopher Guest, and Nicholas Guest. So basically, it's bros all around on this one. I haven't seen it. I kind of want to now that all the brothers are in there. It's like everybody's sitting on the same side of the church at the wedding. But Long Riders, I've heard great things about it, and I think that it's going to be a lot of fun to watch that one as well. There are a lot of extras on each of these ones. I won't go through all the extras, but I will put up the back of the box just to show it to you so you can freeze frame on that, so you can find out all the extras on all of the discs. There's some really diverse Walter Hill movies in this. And the best two are for last. I saw this one. It's about bare knuckle boxing in the Depression. It's one of the better Charles Bronson roles as well. Hard Times with Charles Bronson and James Coburn together. Jill Ireland turns up as well. And Bronson was really ripped in this movie, as he was in indeed in a number of other ones. Yeah, this is one of those kind of really hardcore 1970s movie that, and I'm going to use this pun, pulls no punches. And it's got solid acting by both Bronson and Coburn as well. I saw this in the cinemas in the 70s, and I was blown away by just how hard it was and how tough it was. There were a few movies like that in the 70s that I really enjoyed, but Hard Times was definitely one of them. And then the last one, which is on 4K, and it's one of those great Wheelman movies, The Driver, with Ryan O'Neal and Bruce Dern in it, in 4K for the first time in Australia. And as you know, 4Ks don't have ridge encoding on them either, and Imprint movies don't either, so I'll read you the blurb because I love these blurbs they put on 1970s movies. The driver is the best wheelman for hire. The detective is the top cop in the force. Nobody who tracks down ever eludes him, except the driver. 4K of that, fantastic, terrific box set, this one. And as I said, it is the one that people have been really waiting to come out. And there's a lot of talk on the Imprint Facebook groups about this one in particular, asking when it was going to come out. Imprint have done it. There's your one. There's your freeze frame. There's your freeze frame of all of the titles and all of the extras. It's beautifully curated and beautifully put together. And it's got the usual cigarette top box that Imprint do. It's such a solid range of movies from Walter Hill, and putting that last one in there from 2006 is a really nice haul as well, because most people don't know about. But that premise really sells me on it. And then slipping a 4K Ultra of The Driver in there, terrific stuff. Then that leaves us with the last one, which it's another imprint, but this time they're focusing on one actor. And rightly so too. He is a fantastic actor whose performances over the decades, starting in the 60s, are memorable and incredibly rich. It's film-focused Gene Hackman, with a whole bunch of Gene Hackman movies from pretty much the 1970s, which aren't the big ones. They're not the French Connection. They're not all the ones you know. But they're solid acting roles and solid films by Gene Hackman. Again, I'll put a freeze frame of the back cover of this up on the screen so that you can see the extras. Now, this one's a drama. It's about a middle-aged university professor whose mother has died, and he has a very difficult relationship with his father. I'm not usually keen on daddy issue movies for my own glitches, but this one's dead solid. It's got Gene Hackman, Melvyn Douglas, Estelle Parsons, I Never Sang for My Father. This, I know, hasn't got a Blu-ray release in Australia. I don't know whether it has overseas, but it's a solid drama, and it shows that other aspect of Gene Hackman that's not Popeye Doyle, but it's a more nuanced and complex character, and it's definitely worth checking out because, I mean, I keep seeing Gene Hackman turning up in 1960s small roles in movies. Been watching a few, and there's Gene Hackman, yeah, and he does really well with this, but this is before the French Connection. This is when people started to take notice of Gene Hackman as an actor, and it may well have contributed to him getting the French Connection. So it's a serious drama and a complex one. Who directed it? Directed by Gilbert Cates, Phoebe Cates' father. Screenplay by Robert Anderson, based on his play, so it's based on a play. I haven't seen this one for a very, very long time, but I'm anxious to do so because my Gene Hackman and the fact that he knew when to get out of acting as he got older. He's 91, he's still in relatively good health from what I hear. And I kind of feel good about that. Let's move on to a bit of a Western. This one is a good cast too. This one's a Western about a race across the American West for a prize, which is a kind of concept that, yeah, you can go to different locations and have different picaresque things happen to the protagonists. And it also stars James Coburn and Candice Bergen. It's from 1975. Bite the Bullet. A little bit of a comedy, a little bit of a Wild West fun fest. It says, a former Rough Rider must match his wits and wiles against a beautiful but tough woman, a drifting ex-mercenary, a young reckless cowboy, and a gutsy Pony Express rider in the turn-of-the-century tale of a grueling 700-mile race across the frozen mountain pass and sun-parched deserts of the American Wild West. Bit of a fun exercise there. Gene Hackman having a little bit of fun as well. They don't make many Foreign Legion movies anymore. Not sure why. Not sure whether the French Foreign Legion doesn't let them. But there were a whole bunch of them. There were Beau Geste. There was the last remake of Beau Geste. There are a whole bunch of them. And this is one of the last kind of impressive French Foreign Legion movies, March or Die, which has Gene Hackman, Terence Hill, Max von Sydow, Ian Holm, and Catherine Deneuve in it. Music's by Maurice Jarre, and it was directed by a guy called Dick Richards-Nez, a documentary about Dick Richards, who was a very interesting character in this one as well. Yeah, March or Die, I remember seeing at the time. I saw a whole bunch of these kinds of movies in the 70s in particular. You know, people who go out in the Moroccan desert or sometimes even just the California desert and knock out a French Foreign Legion movie. Good casting, too, international casting. Terence Hill being Italian, Max von Sydow being Swedish, Catherine Deneuve being French, and Gene Hackman being American. So you got a nice international cast in that. Again, that's one I want to look at, but this is the one that really interests me. I'll give you the blurb first. Roy Tucker, imprisoned for killing the sadistic husband of Ellie Riggins, the woman he loves, is promised freedom in exchange for a favour: the assassination of a powerful national figure. Now, this is a Stanley Kramer movie, The Domino Principle. Really good action film. It's got some great action set pieces. It's got some good character pieces, particularly with Gene Hackman and Candice Bergen in it. Directed by Stanley Kramer. And this one's a part of that paranoia in the 1970s after Watergate and Nixon and all that kind of thing. It's from 1977. It's not top tier 1977 political paranoia movie, but it's nice and solid. It's the end of the career of Stanley Kramer, who always made very didactic movies. Hackman and Bergman in this one play off each other really nicely. And again, it's a man on the run kind of thing as he's trying to escape these people who want him to kill a political leader. And Hackman did everyman kind of characters really well. Those kind of working class, everyday kind of characters were his meat and potatoes. And in the Domino Principle, he delivers that. It's a really underrated 1970s political action thriller, which you should check out. Imprint have dug deep to find the unusual in someone's career and to deliver them in a great format and with extras as well. So every time Imprint brings things out, I'm reminded that what they're doing is kind of educating movie buffs in the history of cinema in the best possible way. They're putting out quality products with quality extras, and they're digging deeply to find the really interesting stuff. And so thank you again to Via Vision for doing that. So that's it. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and leave a comment. Tell me what you like in this very diverse haul. You can also support the channel by donating at patreon.com/TerryTalksMovies. Next up, I just got to get my head right, it's Science Fiction Saturday again, because I'm releasing this on the Wednesday. And until then, watch some good movies, watch some bad movies, watch some British comedies and some serious 1970s dramas. And I'll catch you next time.